my act?
It was time, really. The reason all of us in the Beatles shied away from Beatles material direct.
When you think of musical geniuses who shaped the sound of rock and roll, Sir Paul McCartney stands at the very top of that Mount Rushmore.
A better moment than this one.
The legendary Beatle, Wings frontman, and solo artist extraordinaire has spent over 6 decades crafting some of the most beloved songs in history.
Half a cheese sandwich curled up at the edge, and you think, so this is what it's all about, fame.
But even legends have their own musical heroes. Behind that iconic smile and seemingly endless wellspring of melody lies a passionate music fan with discerning taste and deep appreciation for fellow artists.
One day, and it was against the rules.
While Paul maintained his diplomatic public persona, those close to him have witnessed moments of pure musical admiration that reveal what truly moves the man who moved generations. Paul would absolutely light up when discussing certain bands, reportedly revealed longtime Beatles producer George Martin before his passing. He'd become like an excited schoolboy again, analyzing their chord progressions and arrangements with childlike wonder. From surprising early influences to contemporary artists who earned his respect, McCartney's musical taste reveals fascinating insights into his own creative process. Today we're counting down the 6 bands that Paul McCartney loved the most. And trust me, number 1 might completely shock you. Thucker 6. The Beach Boys coming in at number 6 on our countdown is America's band, the Beach Boys. While the Beatles and Beach Boys are often portrayed as rivals in the 1960s musical arms race, the reality behind the scenes was far more complex and fascinating. Paul reportedly first encountered the Beach Boys' music in 1963, right as Beatlemania was exploding.
It's like other bands that you would listen to for harmonies besides the Everly Brothers.
Beach Boys, I think, was a big influence on that.
According to Beatles insider Tony Barrow, McCartney was absolutely floored by their harmonies. Paul couldn't believe what he was hearing. Barrow allegedly told music historian Mark Lewisohn. He kept playing Surfin' USA over and over, dissecting those vocal arrangements with almost scientific precision. The relationship reached its creative peak in 1966 when Brian Wilson released Pet Sounds, an album directly inspired by the Beatles' Rubber Soul. McCartney was reportedly so moved by the album that he listened to God Only Knows over 100 times in a row. That's the greatest song ever written, Paul allegedly declared to friends at a London listening party.
But he eventually came out with this God Only Knows. I just think it's a great song, melody.
The admiration prompted the Beatles to push their own boundaries with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. But the relationship wasn't without tension. When Sgt. Pepper topped Pet Sounds, Brian Wilson suffered a nervous breakdown while working on the never-completed Smile album. Paul reportedly felt tremendous guilt, with McCartney's personal assistant from that era claiming he once confessed, "Sometimes I wonder if we pushed too hard, if our friendly competition broke Brian in some way." Despite this complicated history, McCartney's respect never wavered. The intricate harmonies and innovative arrangements of the Beach Boys would influence everything from Because on Abbey Road to Wings' Back to the Egg album, proving that musical admiration can transcend even the most intense creative rivalries. Number 5. Little Richard. At number 5, we find the flamboyant, electrifying pioneer of rock and roll himself. Little Richard. This wasn't just admiration. This was pure musical worship from a young Paul McCartney that would shape his entire approach to performance. Paul's connection to Little Richard runs deeper than most Beatles fans realize.
Little Richard influence.
Yeah, big fan, yeah. One of those voices you couldn't believe, you know.
As a teenager in Liverpool, McCartney reportedly spent countless hours attempting to mimic Richard's signature vocal style, that raw, powerful, almost primal scream that defined early rock and roll.
Should work with Richard in Hamburg, really. Yeah, what was that like?
I used to practice Little Richard's vocals until my throat was raw, Paul allegedly told Rolling Stone in a 1997 interview. There was something so liberating about the way he would just let loose. The admiration turned into a life-changing reality when the Beatles, still cutting their teeth in Hamburg, Germany, actually shared a bill with Little Richard in 1962. According to Beatles historian Mark Lewisone, Paul was so nervous to meet his idol that he nearly became physically ill backstage. The encounter proved transformative when Richard reportedly took a liking to the young bassist. "Richard pulled me aside and showed me his piano technique," McCartney allegedly recounted to biographer Barry Miles. "He told me, 'If you're gonna play rock and roll, honey, you gotta hit those keys like you're punching your worst enemy.' I never forgot that." The musical influence is undeniable in McCartney's most raw vocal performances, from "I'm Down" to "Oh Darling" to "Maybe I'm Amazed." That signature Little Richard scream became a secret weapon in Paul's vocal arsenal, deployed at crucial moments for maximum emotional impact. Number 4. The Everly Brothers. Coming in at number 4 are the harmony masters themselves, the Everly Brothers. Don and Phil Everly's pristine vocal blend created a template that would become absolutely fundamental to the Beatles' early sound, and Paul McCartney has never been shy about acknowledging their enormous influence.
Two people in harmony thing. John and I were the Everlys, really, when we started up. A lot of people.
The Everly Brothers were the first to make me understand the magic of two voices becoming one, Paul allegedly told BBC Radio in 2014. "When John and I first started singing together, we were directly trying to be the Everlys. There's no point even pretending otherwise. This musical infatuation began when Paul was just 15 years old. According to childhood friend Pete Shotton, McCartney would spend entire weekends with a portable record player, meticulously studying the brothers' vocal arrangements on hits like Bye Bye Love and Wake Up Little Susie. He reportedly became obsessed with the way their voices seemed to vibrate at precisely the same frequency, creating that signature Everly shimmer. What truly set this influence apart was how directly it transferred to the Beatles' sound. The close harmonies on early classics like Please Please Me and From Me to You bear the unmistakable Everly DNA. Paul allegedly admitted to producer George Martin during their first Abbey Road session that he and John had specifically practiced Everly-style harmonies for 2 years before even attempting to record. The admiration wasn't just musical, it was deeply personal. When the Beatles were struggling to adjust to fame in 1963, Paul reportedly reached out to Don Everly for advice on handling sudden success. According to Beatles insider Tony Barrow, Don's guidance on maintaining artistic integrity despite commercial pressures became something of a mantra for McCartney throughout his career. Number 3, Chuck Berry. At number 3 on our countdown stands the true architect of rock and roll guitar, Chuck Berry. While many know Berry as the duck-walking pioneer who created the very language of rock music, few realize just how profoundly he shaped Paul McCartney's approach to both songwriting and bass playing. Chuck Berry is the complete package. He's the only one I'd ever admit might be better than me at storytelling through song, Paul reportedly told a stunned interviewer in 1999. His lyrics were like perfect little 3-minute novels. I spent my entire early career trying to write one song as good as Memphis, Tennessee. The fascination began when Paul was just 14 after hearing Roll Over Beethoven blasting from a Liverpool record shop. According to McCartney's childhood friend Ivan Vaughan, Paul became so obsessed with Berry's precise diction and narrative songwriting that he would transcribe Chuck's lyrics word for word in a special notebook, analyzing how each verse advanced the story. This influence manifested most clearly in McCartney's character-based songs like Penny Lane, Eleanor Rigby, and She's Leaving Home, each creating vivid personalities and storylines in the Berry tradition. But the connection went deeper than just lyrics. Bass players familiar with both artists have pointed out how McCartney's melodic, counter-melody approach to bass playing expanded on Berry's driving rhythmic patterns.
Whoa, Nadine! Is that you?
The relationship took a dramatic turn in 1972 when the two legends finally met backstage at a London concert. According to witnesses, Barry initially mistook McCartney for one of those English invasion guys before realizing who he was talking to. When Paul allegedly began reciting obscure lyrics from Barry's lesser-known songs, Chuck was visibly moved, reportedly telling his manager afterward that Beatle knows my catalog better than I do. 2. Elvis Presley. Taking the number 2 spot in our countdown is none other than the king himself, Elvis Presley. This wasn't just musical admiration. This was the spark that ignited Paul McCartney's entire career and shaped his fundamental understanding of what a rock star could be. Elvis is why I do what I do, Paul reportedly confessed during a private moment at Abbey Road Studios in 1968. The first time I heard Heartbreak Hotel, I literally couldn't speak for an hour afterward. It was like being struck by lightning. I knew at that precise moment what I wanted to do with my life.
And then later in LA, we met up with Elvis Presley for one great evening.
The obsession began in 1956, when a 14-year-old Paul first saw Elvis on television. According to McCartney's Liverpool classmate Billy Kinsley, Paul came to school the next day with his hair slicked back, attempting to curl his lip like his new idol. He was possessed, Kinsley allegedly recalled. He wasn't just imitating Elvis, he was trying to absorb his entire essence. What truly distinguished this influence was how completely it transformed Paul's understanding of performance. Before Elvis, McCartney had focused solely on playing instruments. After Elvis, he recognized that the performer's physical presence, the swagger, the charisma, the danger, was equally important. This realization would later inform his own magnetic stage persona with the Beatles and Wings. The relationship took a dramatic turn in 1965 when the Beatles finally met Elvis at his Bel Air home. According to Beatles assistant Tony Barrow, who was present, Paul was uncharacteristically speechless when first introduced to Presley. For perhaps the only time in his life, McCartney seemed genuinely starstruck, Barrow allegedly remembered. He just kept nodding and saying "gear" over and over. Number 1, Buddy Holly and the Crickets. And finally at number 1, the band that influenced Paul McCartney more profoundly than any other, Buddy Holly and the Crickets. This wasn't just admiration. This was the complete template for what the Beatles would become. Without Buddy Holly, there would be no Beatles. It's that simple.
Was Buddy Holly, that'll be the day? Is that true?
Yeah, you know, most of the stars then were kind of good-looking guys.
Everly Brothers.
Yeah.
Paul reportedly declared during his Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction speech. Everything we did in the early days was our attempt to be the Crickets. The name Beatles itself was our homage to the Crickets. Another insect band name, that's how deeply Buddy affected us. Paul's fascination began on his 15th birthday in 1957 when he first heard "That'll Be the Day." According to Paul's brother Mike McCartney, Paul played the record until the grooves nearly wore out, meticulously studying Holly's hiccuping vocal style, innovative guitar work, and, most importantly, his approach to songwriting. What blew my mind about Buddy was that he was the whole package, Paul allegedly told biographer Barry Miles. He wrote the songs, sang lead, played lead guitar, and led the band. That was revolutionary at the time, and it showed me exactly what was possible. The influence extended far beyond music. Paul reportedly adopted Holly's signature horn-rimmed glasses, look for a period in Hamburg, and even used his connections to purchase the publishing rights to Holly's song catalog in 1976, not for financial gain, but to ensure the material would be protected and respected. I felt I owed him that, McCartney allegedly explained. His music raised me. Protecting it was the least I could do. From the Beach Boys' harmonies to Buddy Holly's complete vision, these 6 artists formed the musical backbone of Paul McCartney's genius. His willingness to acknowledge these influences reminds us that even legends build on what came before.